Okay, folks, it's time for part 2, but I'm going to switch things up a bit. One thing I've learned from these answers series for sure is that you can't count on Fundy Atheists to do any serious research about your claims and arguments. At most, they'll ask you a bunch of dumb questions. Then when you answer them, they'll ask 3 times more dumb questions showing how little they understood what you said. The classic example happened in part 1 of this series, where a bunch of them had this idea that I just made up the whole template of honor and shame. So this means what for this time? Well,
if your child was dying, and I hope that never happens, I seriously hope that never happens, would you just pray for them, or would you take them to a doctor?
Yeah, you can see where this is all going. It's the same old story we've had a few times before here, on prayer. The last time I pointed this out, a lot of Fundy Atheists didn't pay attention, so I'm going to put it in their face this time, okay? If you're a long-time viewer who's seen this before, please bear with us. And maybe use your control buttons at the bottom of this bid to fast forward.
Hey Christians, this is Mitch again, and this time I want to talk to you about the problem of unanswered prayer. You know, Jesus made a lot of extraordinarily broad promises about prayer and what it can do for you. Check out some of these. Wow, that's some powerful stuff. But hey, when was the last time you had all your prayers answered, huh? Listen, as Christians, you have to take what Jesus said seriously. But the only way you can get out of this is to have his words die a death of 1,000 qualifications. Why not take the easier answer? Prayer doesn't always get answered because God doesn't exist.
Here we go again, I suppose.
Come on, why can't you leave me alone?
Oh, because, old chap, you can't seem to stop fouling up your exegesis.
Hey, you leave my digestive problems out of this.
Yes. Look here, old bean. You speak of not taking Jesus' word seriously, yes?
Well, yeah, he meant what he said, and he said what he meant. That's the way I see it.
Oh, indeed, but, are you quite certain you know what he said?
It's right there in plain English, ain't it?
Let me show you something. Now you know this story, yes?
Yeah, what does that have to do with anything?
Do you think this promise was literal?
I don't know. It does seem kind of weird for Herod to promise up to half his kingdom. Maybe he was exaggerating.
Oh, so you don't take what Herod said seriously?
Hey, I didn't say that. I said... Wait a minute. Are you saying that Jesus' prayer promises are like Herod promising half his kingdom?
Why, yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. I mean, think about it. If Herod's promise were actually fully literal, one would have to assume that the girl's immediate answer would be along the lines of, "Why, thank you, sir, I'll take the north half, please." After all, with that kind of power, she could get her mother John the Baptist's head anyway. The key here is that to offer half of one's possession was a favorite expression. It simply meant that the person was exceedingly grateful and wished to bestow a generous reward. By the same token, it's a decontextualization to take Jesus' prayer promises as literal promises that are to be taken liberally advantage of. Promises like Herod's were made with the full understanding that they were dramatic hyperbole, not an ironclad literal guarantee. So it's not me who doesn't take Jesus' word seriously, old man. It's you.
That's really weird. I figured you'd go for the argument that prayers aren't answered because it isn't God's will.
Oh, that's quite true as well, but the reality is that in Jesus' day and age, only a small number of sages were considered pious enough to ask for anything they wanted and receive it. And the pious, of course, wouldn't be going around asking for just anything they wanted, but only what they supposed to be in the will of God.
Aw, come on, that's just a qualification you're adding. Jesus didn't say anything about God's will.
Oh, he hardly had to. A call to believing prayer presupposed a heart of piety submitted to God's will. It's inherent in the very nature of the proposition. Oh, and also have a look at these.
Okay, so?
Well, notice the objects of each prayer, basically daily staples. Not a Rolls Royce or wealth or even being spared suffering or ill health. Now, given those parameters, do you really think those promises by Jesus offer a chance at unlimited largesse? Or do you suppose they might suggest a more humble approach?
Well, I guess. But what's the point of prayer, then?
Well, within the context of an ancient patronage relationship, one in which God the Father is patron and believers are clients, Jesus acts as a broker for those prayers. In such situations, no client expected unlimited granting requests, and likely even knew many of them would not be granted. However, submitting the request was a proper and honorable way of recognizing the authority of the patron. That's also why persistence in prayer is presented as a model. One was expected to continue to recognize the patron's authority even when a prayer was not answered positively.
So what you're saying is, prayer was sometimes sort of like a legal formality?
That would be a somewhat rough way of putting it, but it'll do.
Man, these issues are a lot more complicated than I thought. I just figured if I prayed not to be eaten by a monster, it wouldn't happen.
Oh, did you pray that today?
Of course not. I'm an atheist.
Very well then. Turns out these chaps are a little more digestible than some Beano. Okay, with that in mind, let's answer the questions.
If your child was dying, and I hope that never happens, I seriously hope that never happens, would you just pray for them, or would you take them to a doctor?
Definitely, take them to the doctor. Prayer? Well, that's up to you. So now.
And if you do both, which one do you think has more of an impact?
So yeah, here's the false premise again, that the purpose of both of these things is to make an impact. If you paid attention to the vid we just showed, you know that's not what prayer is for.
Whose prayers does God answer?
This is not something you really answer that simply, though. As I said in that prior vid, only the pious who knew God's will expected a positive answer to prayer, because the point of prayer wasn't to ask for stuff.
If it's ultimately His will, why even bother praying?
As that prior vid says, you bother in order to show your proper place in a patronage relationship, not to ask for stuff. And no, Fundy Atheist, I didn't make up that stuff about clients and patrons.
If you have cancer, what would help you more, certain drugs or prayer?
Yeah, basically the same question as the first one we covered this time. Just a different topic.
Let's say you had an amputated limb. Would prayer ever bring it back?
Yeah, well, you know where this one comes from. And just for the record and for fun, let's see my prior answer again. Once again, bear with us while we hold a bottle to the mouths of the Fundy Atheist.
In this short video, I'm going to assume that you're an educated Christian. You have a college degree and you've been trained to think logically and rationally about the world we live in.
Oh, great. Someone put this mess on my channel. Alright, we'll just deal with it. Oh, no, not that I haven't before. You see this website listed in the corner? Yeah, it's been around a while. Stupid as all get out. When it first came out, it was called Why Does God Hate Amputees? And I did a parody of it on one of my other websites. I'll give you a link in the vid description. But anyway, since it seems this mess is here now, we'll go ahead and thrash it a bit. There's 10 questions. Well, we'll do one or so at a time. That's about all I can stand before stuff like this makes me lose my lunch.
For example, you might be an engineer or scientist, a doctor, pharmacist or nurse, a teacher, a manager or an administrator, a government
or a garbage man or a crab fisherman or a guy who makes boring vids that look like 2-bit PowerPoints. Sheesh.
Religion. Here's an example of the kind of thing I'm talking about. As a Christian, you believe in the power of prayer. According to a recent poll, 3 out of 4 doctors believe that God is performing medical miracles on earth right now. Most Christians believe that God is curing cancers.
Whoa! See this vid? Let's get some things straight. I don't go in for this on-demand right now view of prayer these nutballs think represents the reality. Yeah, I know, you got lackeys like this character who think that's the way prayer works. I know that. But you want the serious biblical grasp on prayer? That's not who you go to. You want to know where these guys who made that website went for their views on Christian prayer? Take a guess. Yeah, real professional sources there. Oh, now this refers to a poll of doctors. Well, I don't know or care what polls say, but if you want the best and most scholarly treatment of whether miracles take place today, including medical ones, this 2-volume set by a scholar named Craig Keener is the bomb, okay? Alright.
Diseases, reversing the effects of poison, and so on. So here's question 1. Why won't God heal amputees? It's a simple question, isn't it? We all know that
simple-minded is more
legs
like
do
it.
not spontaneously regenerate in response to prayer. Amputees get no miracles from God. If you're an intelligent person, you have to admit that this is an interesting question. On the one hand, you believe that God answers prayers and performs miracles. On the other hand, you know that God completely ignores amputees when they pray for miracles. How do you deal with this discrepancy? As an intelligent person, you have to deal with it because it makes no sense. In order to handle it, notice that you have to create some kind of rationalization. You have to invent an excuse on God's behalf to explain this strange fact of life. You might say, well, God must have some kind of special plan for amputees.
What?
So
God has a special plan for amputees. Great. That's what this guy thinks is our best answer. Okay, let me give you mine. It's a little dishonest to compare prayer for the curing of cancer to prayers for lost legs to regrow. I mean, let's face it, losing limbs isn't a pleasant thing, sure. But in the end, it doesn't threaten your life, and it ain't going to kill you the way a cancer could. So here's the bottom line. Smart Boy here has set the bar of expectation higher than it should be with his cockeyed view of prayer. Then he made it worse by equating cancer with amputation in terms of seriousness. Any more questions? Okay, let's move to the next one and... better deal with lunch first. See you next time. Alright, back to this guy.
If you heard stories about an amputated limb ever growing back, how come there's never a camera around when anything like that happens?
Oh, a good answer to this was given by Craig Keener in this book. Basically, it's because no one is expecting a miracle, so people aren't carrying cameras around. That said, Keener does discuss examples of miracles that manage to get fairly well documented, even if not with a camera. So check it out.
How come there's no cameras around when any miracles happen?
Well, this is obviously a different form of the same question.
If you had an exam coming up, what do you think would help you earn a higher score? Prayer or studying for the tests?
Yeah, there we go again. Same false premise. Prayer isn't meant to give you a higher score.
If you prayed for me over YouTube right now, do you think I would ever know about it somehow?
Not unless I told him. I don't know why he'd think otherwise.
What matters to God more, the quantity of prayers or the quality of prayers?
That's right, neither one. So we can skip the next two questions, which assume we answer one or the other.
Is it possible that your prayers have no supernatural effect and only serve to make you feel better?
I wouldn't say feel better, though. They serve more like to put you in your proper covenant role.
And if that were true, would you ever admit it?
Well, I just did admit it. What's that? That's it? Okay, we'll have another topic next time. And let me close by reminding Fundy Atheist out there that no, I don't make this stuff up, even though you might be too ignorant to know better. If you want to engage this intelligently, you can start by not making clueless accusations like that one. Because if you do, you're headed for a world of hurt. Until next time, this is JP Holding. See ya.